Hi guys, it is time for another Sucker Rock episode. This time we are doing something new for a change. As many of you must already know, Cobra Kai Season 6 has just been released, so I want to take this chance to make a recap and review the whole series in general. When the series was first announced, I knew right away this was going to be a big hit. I mean, it had everything any fan of any movie or franchise in general could ask for. After all, it is a series made by fans for fans, something you don't see very often, especially coming from Hollywood. It couldn't be any more perfect, a whole series serving as a sequel for a beloved franchise, but with the original actors reprising their roles? How many times have we ever seen something like that? Never before. It was like paradise before our very eyes. So the series was released, and oh boy, it was even better than expected. It was like a nostalgia rush. Not only did it capture the essence of the movies, but also that 80 seconds magic, and all that without leaving the present time. It managed to bring the past back and stay relevant at the same time, so it was something both old and new generations could enjoy. Cobra Kai is the best example that this kind of project can work when done right, putting aside big greedy studios' monetary interests in favor of the franchise and its fans. Anyway, that was Season 1, right? Couldn't wait for Season 2. Damn, I even subscribed to YouTube Red. Something I never do by any means. I always watch series and movies on free sites, but I just thought these series deserved that, and that I really wanted to show my support so they could go on. So, Season 2 was released, and this is where things started to get a little off track. I mean, Season 2 is not bad, it's just that I didn't think it was as good as the first one. Maybe it's because the first season is so perfect it's a hard act to follow, but I just felt like something was missing. Maybe some of the crude realism and poignant humor from Season 1. That school fight at the end kind of went overboard, and it was a little too over the top for me. Anyway, after this, the series was picked by Netflix, so no need to keep my YouTube Red subscription anymore. Right? I also feared big studios' typical interference, woke agendas, and the usual shit, so I didn't have big hopes for the upcoming third season. Surprisingly, it was a pretty good season. I don't know if it was at the same level as the first one, but good enough. It went back to its roots, and there was no studio interference in sight, only maybe some woke shit here and there, but nothing that was not already present in Season 1, so okay there. We saw the return of classic characters Chozen and Kumiko, while the ending was epic and it hyped all expectations for the next season by foreshadowing the return of Terry Silver. I really couldn't wait to see Season 4 and enter Terry Silver, one of the most anticipated returns ever, and it was, how to put it, underwhelming to say the least. The overall essence and plot not only contradicted what we saw in the movies, but also what the show itself seemed to acknowledge at the end of Season 3. Terry Silver was supposed to be a manipulative mastermind behind everything that happens, but also a friend unusually loyal to Kreese at the same time. They even made sure to emphasize that with that powerful scene at the end of Season 3. So how come they expect us to believe he is going to betray him the way he did at the end of Season 4? It's like, really, writers? Did you even watch the movies? Or better yet, did you even watch your own fucking show? Damn. What a way to ruin a great character. And don't get me started on how Kreese manipulated Silver the whole time like he was a mindless puppet. Did the writers have any idea who Silver was? I thought they had a clear idea after watching the Season 4 finale, so what happened here? Let's go back to the movies, I mean Karate Kid 3. Who is the one that plotted the whole plan against Daniel despite Kreese being reluctant to do it? Who forced Kreese to take revenge on him and Mr. Miyagi? Who wouldn't let Kreese back off and desert Cobra Kai? Yes, it was Silver manipulating Kreese all the time, not the other way around. That's what Silver was an expert at, making people do things even if they didn't want to. Remember what he did to Daniel? So the show is totally contradicting the very essence of this character. Okay, so after such a huge disappointment, I had no hopes for the next season. I thought the show was done for this time and nothing could save it. After all, what was left after fucking up the best character of the franchise? How could you possibly come back after that? Well, enter Season 5. And just like Season 3, it was a big surprise and a big improvement over the previous one. Aside from the Mexico trip plot, which was kind of pointless, everything else turned out pretty good. Good new characters were introduced. We had some deep insights into the past of Cobra Kai in sync with what we saw back in Karate Kid 3, expanding and developing further the story from what we only got some glimpses of, good fights and good character development, as well as the return of another big name to the franchise, Mike Barnes. Although this last one is sort of a mixed bag because I was expecting him to return as a villain, as we already had too many good guys, and it was getting very one-sided. Regardless, everything worked out well, maybe too well because at the end of the season it felt like everything was pretty much wrapped up and that there was not much to tell from this point on despite a sixth season already being announced, so I couldn't figure out what they could come up with for the final season. I mean, Silver was in jail, all Cobra Kai students had deserted it, and even defected to Miyagi. Old rivalries were all settled, and despite the fact Kreese was still out there, it didn't look like much of a threat now that he had no allies and pretty much every other character in the show had teamed up with Daniel. However, I had been wrong before, and when I didn't have any expectations, the show managed to get back on track, so I really didn't know what to expect, being also that it was an even season, and the show seems to have a problem with even numbers since seasons 2 and 4 were not as good as the rest. But anyway, it was finally July 18th, so it was time to find out. I just finished watching the 5 episodes and I'm happy to say I enjoyed them thoroughly. They managed to come up with a lot of stuff to keep the show going, which was my biggest concern. The main characters have all made amends, or so it seems. Cobra Kai is done for, or so it seems. Everything is fine, or so it seems. The show succeeds in making you believe everything is alright, and that everything is finally worked out. But Kreese was still out there, remember? And although he alone doesn't sound like a big enough threat, he always manages to stand up to the challenge. Besides, he is not actually alone after all. Dawn Kim is still out there too, and she proved to be a very strong ally. And yes, I said her name like that because Kim is her last name and last names come last, because we are speaking English, not Korean, where I very well know surnames come first, but Japanese do that too, and still accommodate to the order used in the Western world when speaking Western languages. Anyway, back to the story. The main plot revolves around preparing for the World Tournament, and that's how I will be calling it from now on, because Sekai Taikai is such a literal translation of the term that it just sounds extremely cheesy and ridiculous. I assure you actual Japanese people would never name a competition like that. Okay, so I got off track again. As I was saying, the World Tournament is around the corner, and the guys have to come up with a team to represent their schools. Nothing seems to be more important than that, until tragedy strikes and things get a little heavy. But we will have to wait for part 2 for now. And that's my only complaint here, we got only 5 episodes after all this wait. I think it was well over a year since the last time. They justified it by saying it was way too big of an event to end it in one shot, but I think that is a poor excuse to cover up the fact they couldn't come up with 10 episodes in time as usual. Besides, each episode felt shorter than the previous ones, and the writing was a little rushed at the end. I noticed that especially when Tori runs away after the fight, and nobody goes after her, not even her boyfriend Robbie. They just give her spot to somebody else, and they almost immediately cut to the tournament inauguration, skipping everything in between. So, nobody tried to get a hold of Tori in that time? She just showed up there as part of the other team like nothing happened. And how about Chosen? He just disappeared at the last moment and nobody says a word about it. It's things like this which make me confirm what I said earlier, they ran out of time. One last thing I didn't like is the setting for the tournament. I mean, Spain? Really? When I think of karate, the last place that comes to mind is Spain. And that goes for any martial arts in general. Couldn't they come up with a more interesting place to hold a karate tournament? Like Hong Kong maybe? That would have been great as it would have mirrored Bloodsport perfectly, where Hong Kong serves as the battleground for the final fight between Japan and South Korea. Just like the one in this show. Remember that. After all, that's where Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai come from respectively. Regardless, I still think this season is quite enjoyable, maybe not as good as the first or third, but still good. So it's time for the verdict. Does Cobra Kai suck or rock? Yes, finally we got us a rock. I hope we can have more like this. Well, that's all for this episode. Hope to see you guys soon.